Hello, everybody. So we're going to start in 5 minutes, and we have one of the speakers who will be speaking in French. So you're definitely going to need headphones. So if you don't speak French, please grab yourself a handset of headphones from the back. I think they're going to need your badge also. So take your badge to them for that. Hi again. Just another reminder about the headsets. If you don't speak French, please get yourself headsets. You speak French? At the back, at the back. So a very big welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, you can give yourself a round of applause. So before we start, because this is an intergenerational dialogue, so I'm going to invite everybody to stand up. Because I know, even if you are an adult, there's a child inside of you that's always longing to play. So we're going to start with something fun, something that's going to ignite the child energy into the space. So I've got an icebreaker to teach you. And it's a very easy icebreaker. It's a call and response. And it's called Mosquito Mosquito. So some of you guys might know it. Please help me. And so I would say Mosquito Mosquito. And you respond by saying, catch it. Catch it, okay? Because sometimes mosquitoes are very irritating, so you just catch it. And when you say catch it, you clap, okay? So should we try that? Mosquito, 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 mosquito. Now here comes the fun part, because sometimes you have to shake it out, okay? So I'll say aram ta, and then you say shake it, okay? But then when I say aram tata, you're going to turn to somebody next to you and you're going to go shake it. Yeah. Okay. Should we give that a try? Can I see thumbs up? Okay. Mosquito, mosquito. Mosquito, mosquito. Aram ta, shake it. Aram ta. Aram tata. Aram tata. Mosquito, 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 aram ta, aram tata, aram ta, aram tata, mosquito, 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 aram ta, aram tata, aram tata, aram tata. Well done. Thank you so much. I'm sure now you all feel welcome, you feel alive, you feel present. So in one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite artists, India Ari, so she says that if old people will talk to young people, it will make us a better people all around. And that's why we are here today. So we are here to really engage the young and the old. And so we welcome you in our first Climate Movement Coalition event on committing to children's right for climate justice. This will be an interactive dialogue across generations. So we bring together like children, and I'm so happy to see actually the majority of the audience in this space, it's children themselves. And I think we haven't seen that before, so I think we should actually give ourselves a round of applause for that. Yay. So as we stand here today, there's 1 billion children that are extremely high risk of the impact of climate change. As for every child born today, they are experiencing many more extreme weather events than their grandparents' generation. Yet in 2021, only 34% of the NDCs were child sensitive and 12% had child participation. And we all know that climate change will continue to impact the future generation for years to come without immediate and appropriate action. So therefore, now is a time that we need to uphold the children's rights to be heard by listening to the children on their ask and needs for committing to the rights and securing their future. So I'm Goli Fuyani from Cape Town, South Africa. I know that my name is a click, and some of you are probably like, huh, what is that? And I will be your moderator for today. But before we get to the run of show, because this is a child-centered dialogue, I just want to remind you of just a few logistic things to be aware of. So I think all of you guys now have headphones. So those who just joined in, please grab yourself headphones because we will have a French speaker, so you are going to need headphones for interpretation. But also please be aware that this is a live stream session, so you're probably now alive on screen on Zoom. And also, we'd like to remind everyone that any photos and interviews with the children, there needs to be consent. So please make sure that you don't approach kids on their own. Make sure that they are with their parents or with the adults for you to conduct those interviews or to take pictures. So to get us rolling, I'm now going to invite JP, who will give us our opening remarks.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon for this almost in the end of the COP. I hope you're not so tired, but I'm sure as I am, we're all tired. But let's keep the energy up with our mosquito. Thank you. Still attend. So my name is JP Amaral. I'm Program Coordinator for Climate and Nature at Alana, a children's rights advocacy organization. Together with over 10 global organizations, we come in an unprecedented moment of joint efforts in COP27 to build the first Children First climate movement with the mission of putting children's rights at the center of the climate negotiations at table. This is the 30th anniversary of UNFCCC, and we still lack of a specific agreement on children, although they represent 1/3 of world population and are the most affected on climate impacts, as recognized in the draft COVID decision launched this morning. 1 billion children, that's half of the world's population, of the children's population in the world, today are exposed to climate risk. From droughts to floods, heat waves and food scarcity, polluted air and water, children have their rights violated daily, especially in the global south. That's why we don't call them the future generations. We call them the generations of today, because the children of today are having their development and dreams disrupted by the lack of climate action and ambition in their interests and respecting their rights, as stated by the UN Convention of the Children's Rights, which is the most ratified treaty worldwide. We cannot let them take this for the rest of their lives. What we fight for is to give them a future in the present, not wait for a better future to come. We need to start doing it today. And we need to start by listening to them. That's what we propose with this panel, and that's also what we're going to start with, a video from Lunetas, a Brazilian journalistic platform on the multiple childhoods. This video brings voices of children from the Amazon, peoples of the forest, from urban and rural areas, from quilombolas to indigenous communities. So let's go for it. Here they are.
Lá na minha antiga casa, onde eu morava, tinha muito lixo espalhado pela rua, os rios era tudo poluído, cheio de garrafa, sujo, era bem feio lá.
O céu é só fumaça, a gente só consegue ver fumaça hoje em dia.
É quando destrói a natureza e o tempo muda.
O ser humano tira sem pensar duas vezes. Quando tirar, não pensa no futuro, ele pensa no agora.
Eles estão derrubando a nossa floresta, queimando, sujando nosso rio com garimpo. A gente trabalha pela draga, a gente tira o ouro do nosso rio. A gente tá branca, igual leite, no caso dos garimpeiros. A coceira.
Faz medo de pegar malária, dengue.
Eu já cheguei a pegar leptospirose e eu quase morri por conta dessa doença.
Para as pessoas que moram assim na beira do rio é muito triste, porque elas estão passando por sérios problemas por causa da enchente, estão perdendo suas casas.
E a gente vê muitas famílias perdendo todas as coisas que já conquistaram, todas as coisas que eles já conseguiram comprar com muito trabalho, com muito esforço, de muito tempo. A gente vê que eles perderam tudo.
E antes dos incêndios tinha muitos animais, muitas plantas. E a gente tinha bastante plantação e com a queimada queimou todas as nossas plantações.
Tudo que a gente tinha, o fogo levou. E agora a gente está tentando recuperar.
E nós estamos sem luz também, e eu tô com medo. Eu fico preocupada que um dia acabe os recursos naturais e aí não exista mais o ser humano.
É até difícil imaginar como é que vai ser o futuro, como é que vai ser o amanhã, se hoje em dia já tá do jeito que tá.
Eu fico com medo de mundo acabar.
A natureza pra mim é tudo.
E para ajudar, a gente pode plantar mais árvores, parar de poluir o mundo com fábricas, andar menos de carro e respeitar bastante as regras de lei da natureza.
A floresta é minha casa, onde eu gosto de pescar, ir pro mar, comer fruta.
Eu acho que para que realmente exista um futuro onde a gente possa viver, eu acho que precisam ter leis mais severas para realmente punir as pessoas que estão desmatando árvore, que estão queimando florestas e que estão poluindo oceanos e fazendo coisas que realmente agridem o meio ambiente. Então, eu acho que todo mundo deveria ter essa consciência de que quando nós fazemos algo contra o meio ambiente, nós estamos prejudicando a nós mesmos.
Muita gente acha que no futuro vai ser muito automatizado, essas coisas. Só que a gente também tem que pensar que a natureza é uma das coisas, sendo uma coisa mais importante para a nossa sobrevivência. Eu acho que cuidar da natureza é um dever de todos, porque a natureza é de todo mundo, a gente tem que sobreviver com ela.
Minha terra é marcada, meu rio limpo.
É brincar muito, se divertir e relaxar um pouquinho no sol.
Que as crianças sejam felizes.
Eu desejo que todas as crianças não passem pelo que eu passei.
Children know exactly what is happening, so let's give them this voice. Let's give them what they need and what they want. And they also know exactly what are the responses to it. As one of the kids said, we need to follow the laws of nature. Simple as that, powerful as that. And in order to translate these messages, we, the Children First Climate Movement, we built a position brief for this COP, which is in the QR code right there. For this COP, looking at the different entry points where we believe parties, the countries, the states, can commit to children's rights to climate justice. Just to give a brief overlook on those entry points, but we have the materials, as I know all of you will want to be until the end of this panel. We can also share this material physically. We have just some last versions right here. So first of all, adaptation as well as loss and damage. When we build infrastructure to adapt to climate change impacts, as well as recovering from the damages caused, we need to consider that children are the most affected by violence, refuge, mental and physical health issues, deaths, and school dropout. So the global goal on adaptation, the climate finance mechanisms, all those mechanisms that are being discussed at this COP on loss and damage specifically need to consider children-specific goals and actions. Global stocktake, which brings the information and metrics to what we are looking for in the plans from the country and the metric and the goals from the countries, needs to focus on children, especially girls. So we need to have this information on age and gender, which we were glad to see on this first draft, the first text that came out today on the cover decision. Gender, among the multiple childhood, girls are the most impacted first and affected. We believe the Gender Action Plan is an amazing initiative that can be bolder on girls' rights, and we are here glad to see some advance in this draft cover decision text. Engagement from the Action for Climate Empowerment is leading to that. So we are feeling that educational and climate empowerment are the basis of everything if we want future leaders and climate citizenship. So we are happy to see also that the ACE is leading to that, but we still need stronger decisions. And finally, oceans, a debate that is just coming up from last COPs, and we're growing the discussion for the climate crisis and the relations on how that will impact also the future of our children. So please feel free to get our policy brief to know more, download it, or you can also have the materials in the end of the event. And as you leave this room today, please take with you this message to your country delegation and to other delegations that you see in the room in this labyrinthic map of pavilions, right? But above all that, we need to mainstream children's rights into all UNFCCC mechanisms, procedures, and decisions once and for all. We need a children's action plan to consider 1/3 of world population. And to discuss where we are right now at the climate discussion at this COP, I would like to invite my colleague Saher Rashid Baig, which is the Global Youth Advocate and Climate Engagement Advisor at CRIN. Come along, Saher.
Thank you. Thank you, JP. Good afternoon, everyone. We have identified some of the COP27 negotiation decisions so far focused on children and youth, and I really want to, all of us in this room, we really want to recognize the efforts done by Children's Environmental Science Initiative, our colleagues Johnny and Sean, who are not here right now today in this room, but we're really appreciative of their efforts. So first of all, the Action for Climate Empowerment, ACE, can be considered as a win in context to human rights and climate justice for children and youth, but it took endless advocacy at previous COPs to make parties realize that we belong in the text and not just in the preambular, not outside the main negotiation text. Climate justice actually means making participation accessible and civic spaces safe and inclusive for all, and we all recognize that here in this room. So we have a very good outcome on a Action for Climate Empowerment action plan, having secured all of our key priorities with respect to outputs on children's education and empowerment. The UNFCCC Secretariat, along with contributing organizations, will map and collect guidelines and good practices with respect to children's education and empowerment in climate action. With special consideration given to gender equality and inclusion of persons with disabilities, to be included in the annual summary report under the Glasgow Work Programme. This also provides an entry point to feed the guidance from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, General Comment number 26, a lot of technical terms, maybe some homework for you all to maybe Google it later. But yeah, General Comment number 26, as well as findings, guidance, best practices on education and participation on children's rights-focused organizations. In terms of human rights, including children's rights, we have involvement of children and youth in the effort to promote development of regional and local networks and platforms to support the implementation of Action for Climate Empowerment activities at all levels and providing capacity building in this regard. Under global stocktake, just as JP touched upon previously a little bit, we have a very good story to tell basically here. So I think that we can safely say that we blew the doors off the global stocktake technical dialogues by bringing 13-year-old Francisco for non-party observers to actively participate. Basically bringing Francisco in the room to participate. And this was an unusual opportunity for non-party observers to actively participate in one of the technical dialogues, basically, because as you know, that global stocktake are the indicators to achieve the Paris Agreement, is one of the most crucial negotiations that are taking place this year through 2024. And while Francisco was sadly not allowed to take the floor initially because of his age, the incredible colleague Sarah from Unicef and CERI wiped out around the room to seek support, and his statement was then read by Costa Rica on behalf of the Alliance, with Francisco seated next to the negotiator. The only intervention that also received a round of applause, of course, which it fairly deserved, and the co-facilitators subsequently invited Francisco to take the floor So yeah, great job done by the colleagues from Unicef and CERI, and also Katie from Terre des Hommes. And it is unprecedented to have a child interactive with the negotiator in this way, beyond the opening, closing, and side events, of course. And then we can also talk a little bit about gender in terms of that. I know that there might be people in this room who are not happy with this negotiative agenda items, and we are not either. And this is why we are discussing it. We don't want to just highlight all the good news and all the good practices, because in terms of gender, unfortunately, the current text only contains one operative reference to girls, referring to engaging boys and men as strategic partners. All allies strategic partners and allies in achieving gender equality and empowerment for all women and girls in the context of climate action. But building upon that, we then gathered our advocacy together and push forward for this wording in the cover decision, and we were actually successful, and with these words that now I'm going to read are actually in the cover decision as well. So it says, urges parties to address the differentiated impact of climate change on children, including girls, and consider their roles as agent of change in climate action. Welcome the Human Rights Council resolution on, and General Assembly's resolution on declaring the human right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. So with that being said, we have covered all the negotiation agendas that we had to talk about in terms of children, in terms of children-focused decisions. And I would like to just go back to my seat with saying that climate justice means making participation accessible, of course, for everyone. And we cannot actually achieve it while leaving behind the children's voices. So we would also really like to appreciate every single child present here in this room today. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to add to that, I think two things that we really need to celebrate today. Having Francisco, although it's really weird that we only had one talk from one child, and that was unprecedented. We need to have all tables of negotiations with children being heard and also participating in the dialogues. And also the cover decision draft this morning that had 11 mentions to children. Let's see how it goes until the end, and we hope to keep it up even more. So, Yoli, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, JP, for your opening remarks, and to Sahir for the update of where we are in negotiations. And we can see there's just so much to celebrate in really bringing the children in the center of dialogues and negotiations. So now we are going to hear a few words from Dr. Omnia, who is the COP27 Youth Envoy. And she will be sharing with us like reflection and lesson learned about the children participation at COP27.
So hello everyone, I'm very happy to be with you today. I see many familiar faces. I think this is the most important session that we have here at COP. So I'm Omnia Al-Amrani, and I'm the Youth Envoy for the COP27 President. And this is the first time that a COP presidency appoints a young person to be working together with the team, which is responsible for all the negotiation process and ultimately develops the cover decision, which is the outcome of COP. And the idea that we had in Egypt is that we have a very strong belief and commitment towards youth and children engagement in a way that is meaningful and not tokenistic, but to really have a space for the voices of children and youth to be integrated, especially in a process as climate change, which affects our future the most. And right now, every single child is at risk because of the impacts of climate change. We can see it in every aspect of our life. We can see how it affects the air that we breathe because of the high levels of air pollution. We can see how it affects the food that we eat because of the acute food insecurity we're seeing in many countries, especially here in Africa, which is very vulnerable to such impacts. We can see it in the water, especially that many children around the world do not access the water that they need on a daily basis, but it also affects our schools, our education, our families, our friends and communities. But at the same time, it's so inspiring that we are not in despair, and we are not giving up. Instead, we are taking the time from our studies, from our free time to learn about climate change, to advocate for climate change, because we strongly believe in our power and our capabilities of making a change and of really addressing climate change the way that our leaders aren't yet. But for this COP specifically, I'd like to share a few things that I'm very proud of, and this is also a big thank you to our partners, Unicef, Save the Children, Child Rights Connect, and they really helped us make a lot of things happen at COP. For the first time during the Youth and Future Generation Day, which is the official COP27 Presidency Day for Youth, we had a session that was dedicated for not only the voices of children and adolescents, but a space for them to share their work, their efforts, but also their demands. And they were on stage with ministers as well as UN human rights experts to really discuss together how to co-create solutions, because we believe that climate education is important for empowering children to take the lead of their own solutions, to understand how to address climate change and to be independent and find their voice. And on the second thing, we also believe that the climate crisis is a child rights crisis, and we need to work together to see how we can create an effective legal framework for that has been done for many years by UNICEF as well. And the key takeaways from this very important session is that we as children and adolescents, we have our own inputs, and it's not about creation, it's about co-leadership. Co-leadership in developing the policy asks, the recommendations, as well as the actions and the solutions together. And I was very happy that on the next day in the Egyptian presidency pavilion, we had also another session with 7 inspiring children. One of them was also Francisco. And we were talking about each and everyone's efforts. I really clearly remember what they did. And I know that Francisco wrote a book on climate change. And what was so inspiring is that he translated this book to Arabic, and then it was delivered to another Egyptian child to also share it with his friends and with his school as well. So it's just reflecting on these examples, because this is not just about COP27 in Sharm, it's about all the future COPs. And it's very clear now that your voice and your presence is critical. And it's not just about being there and doing side events, it's also doing intergenerational dialogues with the policymakers, creating your own spaces and inviting the policymakers to come to you, but also pushing for a space within the negotiations to be there with them. And we, as the different young people and the entities, we are there to support one another, to help you, to empower you, to raise your awareness and understanding of what are the negotiations, and how can we infiltrate our asks in that. And because of the different dialogues that we did, I'm very proud to say that this cover decision had a lot of children and youth mentioned within that. This is very important because this is the outcome of your work and your voices, and we need to have a good outcome. We need to have a convention that acknowledges not just young people, but the differentiated impacts of climate change on children, on adolescents and youth. And just very last key takeaways from my end. It's not just about COP, it's about what we do before COP, at COP and after. A good example of this is right before I came here in Egypt, together with Save the Children, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we did our own little COP. It was a COP simulation for children aged 10 to 17, and each child, we had over 100 participate. Each one was his own country, was representing a stance, was delivering the statement, and they were so powerful that I wish that this was what we had here now. But it's also very inspiring, and we have such an amazing potential, and it shows when we are preparing together for it, having simulations, integrating climate change in your own education, in your own schools, doing your own climate action clubs. The sky is the limit to the amount of things that you can do once you go back from COP. But also when we look at COP, it's also important to be patient, be persistent, be there, and make sure that you have your allies, you have all of us working together with you, integrating the climate justice, intergenerational equity, and child rights at the heart of the climate negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omnia. Now that we've set a scene of why we are here today and what a strong movement is behind this, I think now we've I mean, especially children, you're probably now tired of hearing from the adults. Yeah? So now we're really going to focus more on children. So we're going to play a video by Save the Children on their global campaign called Generational Hope. And that's for children's voices from all around the world, following where we'll hear directly from one of the children from Child's Hearings. Yeah.
धेरै हावाको चाप धेरै भएकोले मान्छेहरूलाई एक ठाउँबाट अर्को ठाउँ मतलब त्यो दुर्घटना हुन सक्छ र
mwachisazo nyumba yakwa tinakugoloka pakali pano pani magona mkichini ndiye inayo yandikhuza kwambiri chifukwa chokuti so
فئة الأطفال هي أكثر الفئة المتضررة من التغيرات المناخية.
من وجهة نظري لمواجهة التغير المناخي الاهتمام بالطبيعة، ممكن نهتم بالطبيعة عن طريق تشجير زراعة أكثر عدد من الأشجار والنباتات، وممكن نوعي الناس في المخيمات.
ndikupempha alindo mafumu ndi malimupi kuti akathe kutithandiza kukapereka lamulo lokhwima pa chitetezo.
The fact that 70% of people are worried about the world that they will inherit, it should be a wake-up call, I think, for the older generation.
Podemos ayudar a este mundo que no sea así, que haya vida, más esperanza.
So what a powerful video of children just sharing like their lives and how climate change is currently impacting their livelihoods. And so Save the Children consulted more than 54,000 children from 41 countries about the experience of climate change and inequalities. So I'd now like to welcome Sahil, who will be joining us virtually, actually, who was part of the consultation, who would share with us how the hearing was.
I am Suhail from Jammu and Kashmir, India. I am here representing Save the Children at COP27. Climate change is impacting on children all over the world. There is global warming due to which weather conditions are changing.
So while we're still waiting for the video, maybe we could do a mosquito again. Hey, just to bring the energy up.
I am Suhail
from remember, it's also mosquito, you go catch it. Okay, mosquito, aramta. What do we say when we say aramta? Shake it, aramta, aramtata. Mosquito, aramta, aramtata.
Jammu and Kashmir, India. I am here representing Save the Children at COP27. Climate change is impacting on children all over the world.
Okay, it seems like the tech is failing us. Anyway, so now I will invite on stage Katya to present the Unicef U report.
I am Suhail from Jammu and Kashmir.
Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Ketia Passo-Onima, j'ai 18 ans, je suis activiste climat, jeune ambassadrice Unicef RDC, mais je suis aussi fondatrice d'une petite association qui a pour but d'informer les jeunes sur l'action climatique. Je viens d'Afrique centrale, en République démocratique du Congo, Et aujourd'hui, mon pays est considéré comme le deuxième poumon du monde à cause de ses ressources forestières, mais aussi à cause des différentes ressources en eau ou en matières premières. L'une des plus grandes richesses de mon pays, la RDC, c'est sa jeunesse. La RDC, c'est 2 345 000 km² et une population estimée aujourd'hui à 105 444 646 habitants, dont 60% en moins de 24 ans. Cette population qui subit de plein fouet les effets du changement climatique de manière injuste a aussi besoin de participer au changement et de faire entendre sa voix tout en ayant un cadre approprié afin d'échanger et de partager avec les autres jeunes du pays. En tant que jeune ambassadrice pour la cause climatique Unicef en RDC, j'ai participé à des sondages menés par YouReport sur les inondations notamment. Ce sondage a eu lieu après une forte série d'inondations dans la capitale qui a détruit les écoles, les centres de santé ou encore des domiciles. Le but était de savoir comment cela nous affectait, qu'est-ce que cela avait apporté comme changement autour de nous, mais aussi si nous avions des proches victimes de ces inondations. Ce sondage avait aussi pour but de mener un plaidoyer auprès des décideurs afin d'impulser de réels changements dans notre communauté. Aujourd'hui, un reporter sur 4 déclare que le changement climatique affecte les sources de revenus de sa famille. 2 reporters sur 5 affirment que le changement climatique réduit leur accès à la nourriture, dont 52% en Afrique subsaharienne. Un report sur 5 déclare qu'il est difficile pour lui d'avoir de l'eau potable. Et 3 reporters sur 5 envisagent de quitter leur pays ou leur ville. Aujourd'hui, mon pays, la RDC, compte 4 millions de reporters et je pense que c'est important pour la jeunesse d'atteindre les décideurs et aussi à travers des sondages pour identifier les besoins. Des jeunes à la recherche d'informations qui veulent apprendre, qui ont envie de faire entendre leur voix et de participer à la construction d'un Congo et d'un monde meilleur. Un besoin en connaissance qui n'est pas souvent acquis. Le manque d'information est un problème fréquent, allié à une éducation incomplète qui ne permet pas souvent aux jeunes de trouver leur place en tant qu'acteurs de changement. Un besoin en connaissance qui ne permet pas aux jeunes de se rendre compte que certains actes peuvent détruire et faire plus de mal à la terre. Un besoin en connaissance qui les dotera d'aptitude à faire les bons gestes pour la terre. C'est ce que nous essayons d'inculquer aux jeunes à travers une campagne de sensibilisation Bopetona Kelasi, qui veut dire propreté à l'école. Le but de la campagne est de faire comprendre aux écoliers l'importance du tri et de la gestion des déchets. C'est de les doter de bonnes connaissances pour pouvoir en faire les protecteurs de la terre de demain. Nous relayons des messages d'information et de plaidoyer à travers un blog qui s'appelle Ponabana, qui est en lingala, qui veut dire pour les enfants, avec le soutien d'Unicef en RDC et qui regroupe des centaines de jeunes repartis dans tout le pays. Bopetona Kelasi est une campagne de sensibilisation sur la gestion de déchets qui a touché 171 000 élèves de différentes écoles, mais des milliers qui consultent le blog Ponabana. C'est un moyen pour cette jeunesse qui veut participer et être acteur de changement, d'avoir et de proposer les moyens de le faire. Aujourd'hui, face à la crise climatique que le monde connaît, qui n'est que le début de ce qui arrivera si rien n'est fait maintenant, nous devons tous nous focaliser sur le renforcement de connaissances des jeunes et des enfants afin de les préparer à vivre dans un monde qui change, mais aussi à faire face aux catastrophes climatiques à venir. Je pense qu'en dehors des efforts fournis par chacun, nous tous, nous devons faire en sorte que chaque enfant en Afrique et dans le reste du monde bénéficie d'une éducation sur le changement climatique afin de les préparer et de les protéger. L'éducation reste quand même l'arme la plus puissante que l'on puisse utiliser pour changer le monde. Nous pouvons nous en servir pour façonner un monde beaucoup plus durable. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Katia. So now we're going to get into the moment that we all have been waiting for, our intergenerational dialogue. But before I invite our panelists up into the stage, I'm going to invite Mimi. Mimi is from an organization called Futuris Indigenous in Mexico, where she's basically going to frame us like the importance of having these dialogues, not just on international level, but at local, at national level as well. Welcome, Mimi.
Hola, yo soy Miriam Vargas, soy integrante de la red Futuros Indígenas y agradezco mucho la oportunidad por escucharme en esta tarde.
So hi everyone, I'm Miriam. I'm from this organization called Future Indigenous and really happy and glad to be here with you today.
Era el año de 1991. Ya casi llegaba la temporada de siembra y la abuela iba a ver al tío para que llevara la yunta y sembráramos la tierra.
It was the year of 1991. It was almost coming to the season and the grandmother was going to see the uncle to see what it would be coming to prepare the land.
Mientras tanto, todos los primos y primas jugábamos en el árbol del zapote, en la calle con los vecinos, en los columpios y en los árboles.
And while that, all the cousins were playing under the trees, waiting for the uncle to finish, to prepare the land, and run with their barefoot in the land.
Qué divertidos eran esos días en los que sembrábamos la tierra. Lo mejor venía después, también, cuando jugábamos con los pies descalzos en la tierra, con la lluvia y en las zanjas que corrían y los ríos de nuestro pueblo.
How nice was those moments where we could play barefoot on the land and have the rain and have the different climate weather that would be nurturing our day.
Mientras mi abuela sembraba, nosotros escuchábamos las historias del pueblo, escuchábamos cómo vivíamos hace muchos años cuando la industria no había entrado en nuestro territorio.
We would listen to our grandmother's stories while she was seeding the land, and we would be glad and to listen all those stories before the industries that came to our territory.
Para nosotros fue muy importante escuchar a la abuela porque gracias a eso conocimos el pasado de nuestro territorio y también gracias a eso estamos conociendo cómo cuidarlo ahora.
It was very important to listen to the grandmother, our grandmother, as to really understand and learn from her wisdom, but also to learn how was it back then in the days, and also how can we take care of our territory.
Las abuelas y abuelos en nuestro territorio pues han ido perdiendo la vida, ahora con la pandemia, por ejemplo, y vemos urgente herramientas para que nuestras comunidades, los niños y las niñas, conozcan estas historias de cómo era nuestro territorio y cómo los abuelos y abuelas lo han protegido.
So our grandmothers and grandfathers were really important in this moment, but unfortunately they're losing their lives, like it happened many times during COVID. So the work we need to do and what we are doing is bringing back those stories and telling them to their children to keep the ancestors well known and their wisdom in regards to what we are doing with our territory.
Algunas herramientas que hemos ocupado en nuestros pueblos ha sido la radio comunitaria, algunas revistas comunitarias también, en las que contamos estas historias, estas leyendas, por medio de las cuales los niños y las niñas se enamoran nuevamente del territorio y por lo tanto lo protegen.
So there are many tools to do that, and one of the ways we do it is beyond these dialogues is also having a magazine in our community where we tell these stories from our ancestors and we make them learn from this and fall in love and passionate for the nature and the environment where they live.
Sabemos que es un gran reto construir nuevas narrativas para que los niños y las niñas se integren a este tejido y cuidado de la vida, pero todos los días nos estamos esforzando para cambiar la forma de contar historias, así como lo estamos haciendo también desde la Red Futuros Indígenas, con nuevas narrativas para anunciar los problemas que ha ocasionado la crisis climática, pero también con narrativas que sean pensadas desde los pueblos, desde las comunidades y desde nuestros corazones.
So we know that all this is important, these tools are important, but we really need to look at what we're doing with the nature, with the planet, and also learn new ways to tell these stories and to sensitize and have these dialogues as something important to have our children and also the adults commit to our common planet.
Por eso decimos que si no conocemos esto que estamos defendiendo, si no nos enamoramos de nuestro territorio, pues no podremos proteger todas las vidas que en él habitan. Entonces invitamos a todas, a todos, a que participen de estas nuevas narrativas, de esta construcción de imaginarios en los que las otras vidas también son importantes, no solo la de las personas, sino la de nuestra madre tierra, la del viento, la del agua.
So we invite you all to look for new narratives, new ways of telling these stories, and really so we can nurture the lives not only of the people, humankind, but also the life of Mother Nature, of the water, of the air, all lives in the planet.
Los pueblos indígenas somos los guardianes del 80% de la biodiversidad restante en el planeta, por lo que les pedimos cuidar a estos pueblos, a su cosmovisión, a su forma de vida, y les decimos que somos las soluciones vivas a la crisis climática.
Well, so we tell everyone here what the message that from our peoples and from all the people around the world, that we are the living planet, we are the ones trying to solve this together, and that's what we aim for in these new stories. So join us in this movement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mimi, for reminding us of the power of Indigenous knowledge. You know, as we are moving forward, it's also just a reminder that we constantly also need to look back and remind ourselves of where we come from and really bring in those knowledges into finding solutions for this climate crisis. So now I'm gonna actually invite our panelists to come up onto the stage. So we're so lucky to be joined today by 3 amazing climate advocates under the age of 18. So we have 15-year-old Emmanuel from Norway. We have Romina, who's also 16 years old, from Kenya. Yeah, so I'll just mention their names again. So we've got 15-year-old Emmanuel from Norway, who is part of Econ Agent, Norway's biggest child organization on climate change and environmental issues. We have Ramina, who is 16 years old, from Kenya, founder of Kisimu Environmental Champions, which is a green initiative made out of 120 teenagers and youth. A 10-year-old Nakia, who is from Ghana, who is a Climate Vulnerable Forum youth ambassador who is interested in everything climate and environment. We are also joined by UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Vanessa Nikata, who began advocating for climate justice in 2019 by protesting the streets of Kampala in Uganda. And also we are so lucky to be joined by former President Mary Robinson, who is the former President of Ireland, the Chair of the Elders. And also, we are also joined by Honorable Tambo Motinta, a member of the National Assembly of Zambia, who sits on a Zambian Parliamentary Caucus on Environment and Climate, and is also a Vice Chancellor for the Zambian Parliamentarian Caucus on Children. Let's all give them a round of applause. I actually first want to acknowledge that this is not an ideal setup that we hope for. We were hoping that we would be gathered in a circle, as the elders back in the days where they would gather with the younger children, they would be sitting in a circle and really talking and learning from each other. And so today we really, we're hoping that this is not going to be a question and answer, set up. We really want to create a dialogue where we're just sharing from our lived experiences, but also just sharing our stories, where children, you'll be asking the questions to the elders, but we also want the elders to ask the questions to the children. Yeah. And so again, just a little reminder that there's no perfect answer, especially for the children. Please feel free to speak in a way that's comfortable for you. And if there's a word that you don't know in English, please say it in your own language. Also, we want to remind the elders just to really use a child-friendly language. So if you use acronyms or big terminology, just to define them so that this conversation is inclusive and we can all engage. Okay, so we'll start with our opening question. And this is not really directed to anyone, so if you feel like you want to answer, please jump ahead. And our question is, what is your story? What is your story as a child, an elder, an activist, or country? And what do you think is most important and urgent to put kids first in climate discussions? So as I said, this is not directed to anyone, so if you feel like you want to start, Mary, you look like you want to jump in, please.
All right, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I'm very old. I've grown into be a grandmother, and I really take very seriously that the climate crisis is a child rights crisis. So having worked in human rights for most of my life, I can see that climate is just making everything worse. It's making more children die. It's worsening the poverty. It's making more girls come out of school and be pushed into early child marriage. It's increasing violence with the climate shocks. So that's me as an angry granny. I'm an angry granny, okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mary. Who agrees with Mary? Who else is angry in this room? I'm sure we all are, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I was already introduced. What I would want to echo, we have an angry granny and there is a frustrated politician here. I also feel the young people, no one is paying attention to the young people. And that is what drives me to champion this agenda. I've been in the political space for about one year now. As a young member of parliament, I also feel a bit frustrated. And I feel I should break the silence and perhaps take the lead to talk about this silent social issue which is affecting the world, but more important, affecting the children to a large extent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any child who wants to respond to that question?
For me, I think here in the panel, I have a question for Mary Robinson and Vanessa. I think I'll start with Vanessa since she's next to me. I'd like to ask you, with the situation of the lake, it's getting worse. We're having many children and even adults being poisoned by the pollution in the Lake Victoria. We've tried to address it by doing cleanups, community sensitization on proper waste management, even trying to tell the government that they need to do a lot. But it's not only a Kenyan problem, it's also a Ugandan problem, Tanzania, and I think most of the rest of Africa. And I think with our campaign, Let Lake Victoria Breathe Again, we've tried to restore the ecosystem of Lake Victoria. As you as an individual and together with your organization, Rise Up Movement, how have you tried to do something or rather advocate for the restoration of Lake Victoria? Because it's not just a one country, but many 30 million people are actually suffering from the effects of the Lake Victoria, be it floods, be it pollution, be it sewage, be it the invasive species of water hyacinth. What do you think would be the best way, and how is your Rise Up movement and yourself doing to advocate for this?
Well, thank you so much for putting me on the spot. But first of all, I really appreciate the work that you're doing with Let Lake Victoria Breathe Again, and I'm greatly in support of that work. And also in Uganda, I believe there are some activists as well who are doing almost exactly what you're doing to do the cleanups, in Lake Victoria. And, within Rise Up movement, what I always say is that, this is a whole global movement and we all have a role to play. So we do appreciate the efforts of those who go to the lakes and do the cleanup. We appreciate the efforts of those who go to schools and educate students. We appreciate the efforts of, journalists who are using their platforms to amplify the stories of those on the front lines. We appreciate the efforts of negotiators who are trying, to ensure that the countries on the front lines of the climate crisis get a loss and damage fund, for example. So it's really understanding that we all have that part that we are playing in the movement. But I think what we all need is to support each other and share the different work that all of us do, because in working together and working united, we cannot be defeated.
Thank you for the answer, and I really appreciate your work on trying to bring in different people from different places with your movement. I have the next question to Mary Robinson. I've been seeing your work on social media, even with the elders.org, but I have a complaint, or rather question. Usually work with youths, but I haven't seen you working with children. What is your say or your opinion on having an intergenerational dialogue, be it in your own country, bringing in different people, climate activists who are young, so that you can also try to work on different solutions to solve the climate crisis? Then how could we best make a coalition of the elders and the younger people so that we can try to move on forward as much as the negotiations is taking place, the policy making, decision making, but as long as you don't include the younger voices who have the drive towards making a change in their community, then it will become something that the world leaders are actually doing. So what's your take on that?
Thank you, Mahina, for that very challenging question. But actually, I have been in lots of dialogue with young people and children. I went to the Children's Pavilion here at the COP and had a great exchange. I am very convinced, because you see, the intergenerational conversation is different from when I was your age or younger. You're 16. Yeah. Well, I had a grandfather who was a clever man, and I loved talking to him because he talked about justice. That was in a very small town in the west of Ireland, where I come from. And I was a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and he treated me as if I was an adult. But it was a one-way conversation. I wouldn't have dreamt of asking him a question like you asked me. I accepted the wisdom of that's changed. And what is really, really good is that you ask that kind of question, that children now have a real sense of a voice and of a need to express that voice and to be heard. And you're right. And I'm proud, in fact, of my country, if I can just mention this. Very recently, we've had citizens' assemblies that have helped us get over some problems like climate and same-sex marriage and things like that. But we've also recently, and I addressed it, I did a message at the beginning of it, a children and young people's assembly, where children and young people met and spoke and were on television, and then they made a report to the government. We're not a perfect country, but we're trying. And I, as former president, I'm encouraging. But what I love was the way you put your question. Big challenge in it. And I accept the challenge. And I'll try and do better and do more. Okay?
Thank you, Mary, for accepting the challenge. I mean, I know also among our speakers, there's a huge interest on loss and damage. And I'm wondering, Emmanuel has a question on that, or an insight or a story that you want to share with us?
Yeah, and thank you for a very good introduction earlier. And although I'm dressed as the elders today, I feel I'm actually 15 and represent for the Children's Climate Panel in Norway, which is a democratically elected panel to represent Norwegian children's voices on climate change. And we did a survey with Save the Children earlier this year, and we found out that Norwegian children are deeply concerned about their own future, but even more for children of their own generation's future in other parts of the world. So international solidarity is important for Norwegian children. And therefore I would like to ask Mary, but also maybe the MP from Zambia and the one from Mexico, about how we can implement something good and working on loss and damage, because that is really important for Norway, but also for the rest of the world especially.
Thank you so much. Very good question. And the question borders on how we can implement on loss and damage. As you may be aware, some countries in the southern part of Africa, perhaps they are the most hit on climate change because of poverty and also because of a lot of other factors. And I also agree with you that in this COP, in our negotiations, indeed, the conversation on loss and damage should also be one of the key conversations, because we need to restore the adverse effects of climate change in most of these countries. But one of the issues that I feel has also been the biggest barrier is the ability for the young climate change movements to have adequate information to engage in this kind of negotiations. I'll give you an example. I strongly feel as a legislature and as somebody that is passionate about mainstreaming the rights of children in our climate change conversation, that we as legislatures, as adults, we've not given you enough support in order for you to coordinate better. Because your conversations, if you look at the bigger picture, they say issues around loss and damage, they still sit in adaptation. People are playing with words instead of wanting to come out very clear on some of these conversations. But I feel that our negotiation space is a bit weaker, because we are not, the young people are not given enough space to sit on those negotiation tables, and the level of coordination amongst countries, inter-countries, for the issues that focuses on young people, I feel that we still have work to do. I'll give an example. In my country, very few young people have managed to come for this COP, perhaps only about 5. And just today, to demonstrate that, I've scheduled a meeting between the young people from my country and the minister. Even the media is not covering the young people in this COP adequately as it's covered in the other conversations. So I strongly feel we still need to build a common voice at national level and also across the world on how we champion this agenda. And I'm very sure that with time, we'll get somewhere. But this conversation is being built, though this COP is for implementation. I still feel that the young people are still being sidelined, and we still need to build a little bit more synergy. And this conversation on the rights of children should not be driven by 1 or 2 countries. We should take everyone on board. We need to do a stock taking of all the countries in the Southern Africa, all the countries in Africa, all the countries in the world, so the young people, they speak one voice, so that everyone is taken on board, and you build a common voice, a common agenda, and the critical mass builds up, so that our language by the elders will be heard. And the way we even want the COP agreement, the words to sit, we need the way we want our words to sit to be the way we want them to be. But we still have that barrier where people are still playing politics with the words. They still feel the issues of young people, they can still be embedded in other conversations. We want them to come out straight, so that we feel that this issue is a rights issue and the young people are being taken on board. Thank you.
Emmanuel, if I could put it this way, I feel a great sympathy and empathy for you, for Rahmina, for all the children in the room, that you are today in a world where we're now into loss and damage. It is extremely sad, but it's very, very real. We see what happened in Pakistan, a third of the country underwater. It's happening in so many countries. Vanessa speaks eloquently about her recent visit to Kenya, but it's also in part of your own country, Uganda. And I say this because, this shouldn't have happened if we had properly mitigated, if we'd reduced the emissions in the richer parts of the world and the emerging big economies that are most responsible. And then we didn't do enough about adaptation. And so now we're into loss and damage. I'm very, very sorry for that. I'm sorry that my generation did not do what we should have done, and the generation after me, if you like. It's a sad thing, and I worry about the mental health. And if I can ask you a question. Well, first of all, just for the elders, we are extremely keen to see that this COP comes out with a very serious step forward on loss and damage. We call for a fund or financial facility, as so many others are doing. And we think there's a possibility of linking with the G20, which has talked about reform of the multilateral banks and talked about a very good proposal of Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Bermuda. The Bridgetown Initiative is expressly in their document. We can build on that. The COP here should join with the G20 and get far more money for potential climate finance and loss and damage. But actually, I'd like to ask both of you, how is your mental health? How do you feel about the fact that you're in a world where already we're in loss and damage, which we shouldn't be, but we are? I'll start with you, Emmanuel.
I'll repeat the question because she's asking about the mental health. And I think, we've got Nikita, who's the youngest in this group, and I'll be very interested to hear from her, as a 10-year-old who's in the forefront of climate crisis. So what's your take, your mental health? Mm-hmm. So how do you feel being an activist, being in the forefront? Do you enjoy doing it?
Oh yeah, I really enjoy doing it because doing this, I think, is part of my journey for the enjoyment ministry. Yeah, which I'm not joking with. Yeah, and I think it's a very good thing. I love it. It's very fun, sitting with all these great panel members. It's very good. Yes.
Thank you, Nakia. Emmanuel?
And I agree very much. And we have the same, I think we have much of the same opinion in Norway too. And we made a report out of it also earlier this year, which the title was dedicated to the world's powerlessness and engagement, that we all feel a bit powerless sometimes, especially right now, because we are standing in front of parliaments every Friday and still nothing happens, and that's extremely frustrating. And it makes me angry, and I heard it makes you angry too. But still Norwegian children have the will to continue, and I really hope and I really believe that they will not give in too. But really, I feel very much powerlessness sometimes, but if I can say, cure that with my engagement for a fair world and a good climate when that occurs.
Yeah.
Well, since you asked about my mental health too, for me, I'm still trying to struggle with the climate anxiety because I'm one of the climate-induced immigrants, and I really feel like with other young children who came out from the island of where I come from to go to the shores, it's been a struggle because we can't do the same things that we used to do. Like even, for example, just the little things like swimming inside the Lake Victoria, going to places where it used to be forested, like having an escape and to be with nature. We can't have it right now. So it's really quite heartbreaking to see that even people, for example, in the Pakistan or even the Sierra Leones who are at the front lines of the floods are struggling right now with depression because they've left their own places where they used to be with the children. Many people have died. So I really feel like, in my own opinion, that we could try to make a better space for younger children having different, like, let's say, opinions on the climate crisis, because it's really quite important for us to have such conversations, because many people suffer from climate anxiety, but we normally don't speak about it. We still try our best to fight for climate justice, and I think majorly what we need to speak about right now is perhaps having these conversations and discussions, like even during this conference. Like we could have a good space, like even the Children Youth Pavilion, where we can speak to the children who come from these places, because it's really important for us to acknowledge the fact that the people from the global south are the ones who are suffering the most, yet they're the ones who are the least contributors to this. So maybe the older generation can try to support us, maybe not financially, but maybe even like just talking to us. It also releases the tension and even the kind of depression that we have because of the climate crisis.
I'd like to ask Vanessa this question too, because Vanessa, I'll tell you a secret. Vanessa had a birthday, so she's no longer as young. You know, you're almost one of the adults, I think, on this panel. But you've been a climate activist for a long time now. I think, have you gone through a cycle, and do you feel that your activism helps, or, you know, how are you in your self-care?
Well, I mean, when you start activism, especially at the beginning, you have like this power that you're going to change things so fast, and when things don't change, it can be very frustrating. So I think for me, that is what I've seen as an activist, that things will not change as fast as you want them to change. And it's really important to find, you know, that place that gives you your strength to continue. And sometimes it's in understanding that you're working with a global movement, with different people across the world, because it's very possible to be in this fight and feel all alone and feel like you're holding all this work or responsibility all alone. But when you carry the consciousness and just to know that you are part of a global movement, I think it's very important. And also it helps you know that it's okay to say no sometimes to certain things. It's okay not to hold a strike on a certain Friday if you need to rest. So for me, knowing that I'm part of a global movement, I've realized that I don't have to do everything. Like, we are so many and everyone is doing something, and that's very important. And I also, just to add on something, many times when organizations say they want to support activists and their work, one of the things that is rarely talked about in form of support is well-being. So I think that it's organizations or, people who support activists with resources should start thinking about well-being, as part of the resources, that can support activists. I think it's just good to just be away sometimes and just be able to have good food and just be able to be off your phone and just relax, so that you have more strength. Because I think that we can better take care of the planet if we are also doing well.
Taken care of. Yeah. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for those beautiful words. I mean, talking about wellness, I would like to bring in Diane, just to really share for us. I mean, you've been following the negotiations, and I know it's a very intense process, And Mary asked a very important question about emotional well-being. So how have you been finding that space, especially as a woman also?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm so happy to be here and to see many people in this room interested in children and also in youth and this intergenerational dialogue. Well, as a senior advisor in Action for Climate Empowerment, I have been involved in this program since 2016. When everything about Action for Climate Empowerment started. It was a kind of a newborn baby to ensure the public participation, access to information, and also the youth participation. In fact, I was a Jungo member. So things has been developing differently according to this intergenerational approach. And yes, I will say that at some point it's just a little bit frustrating to be in that room because the participation of youth is always there. But at some points, the voice of youth and also the experience of the youth is not taken in count. I'm talking about right now as a civil society member, because yes, I'm an advisor, right, part of the civil society member in Latin America and the Caribbean. So sometimes it's quite frustrating to say, hey, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, how can I support you in your public policies and also in the negotiation process? And sometimes I felt that no one was hearing, but fortunately the teamwork is important. If you have a family, a work family around you, in your country and also on these processes, an international family is important. In my experience, being surrounded by people of my region, Latin American people and Caribbean people, and we were supporting us each other because I was not the only people in the room at some point in this negotiation, not in this negotiation process. Since 2016, surrounded by people that also were supporting other parties and from civil society, and they were young people, it was massively amazing, you know? It was so supporting because as we were talking about this kind of topic with the youngest people, by the way, in the Mexican youth is here, the youngest negotiators, by the way, they are here. We were talking about, let's go to cry in a corner of the room because we need to talk about this because it's kind of frustrating. But fortunately and technically, during this COP27, we could present and we could work in the Action for Climate Empowerment about human rights and also the importance of youth participation, and that includes the intergenerational approach and also the children approach. So if you can go to the new action plan for the Glasgow Work Programme, and you can see in the C.2, sorry for the technicalities, but yeah, in the C.2 and also in the C.3, we emphasize the importance of providing capacity building opportunities for youth with a focus on decision making and implementing climate action at the national and international level according to the national circumstances. So you can be working together in your local communities, and also this is a supportive decision. Also, we were working to provide opportunities for you to present at ACE Dialogues in Bonn, by the way, and at regional climate weeks to highlight the leadership role that youth play in climate action. Also, allowing the youth to participate in networking sessions and capacity building workshops for national ACE focal points. So it is important for this program that the youth and also the children will be in touch. In fact, they will be in touch. You will be in touch with your ACE national focal point. They are the responsibles to implement the program. But also, as a civil society member, I can tell you that teachers are so interested in Action for Climate Empowerment. So you could see, this is a family thing. Yeah. It's an international family, and the approach of regionally and German perspective is so powerful. So this is my technical and as an advisor approach on this negotiation process.
Thank you so much, Diana. I mean, now, just as for closing, I have a question to all the children, because I'm an optimist and I believe in hope. So imagining if this was a perfect world, what would you be doing? You know, if you didn't have to worry about the climate crisis, what would you be doing with your lives? Or what do you dream of? Like imagining that one day we get it right. we solve this issue, what would you be doing with your lives?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Before anyone answers that question, I'd like to ask my question for Dene. I'm so sorry if I got your name wrong.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so because you are mainly into loss and damages, I wanted to ask you that in my country, Ghana, we face a lot of natural disasters, but we don't face tornadoes and volcanic eruptions and earthquakes and tsunamis. But what we are facing in my country, Ghana, are floods. So let's just jump off from the floods. There's an activity going on which is illegal mining in my country, which we call galamsey. In my country, Ghana, mining is mostly done illegally. Children are being sent into the pits that these illegal miners dig. And you know something that's very heartbreaking? Before they dig the pits, they have to chop down trees. And when you see they chop down the trees, birds lose their homes. And there's a saying that goes like, when the last tree dies, the last man dies. Let's just jump off from the tree side. Let's go back to the children and the youth. Because we have the smaller bodies, when they dig smaller holes, we have to enter and fetch all these resources they are looking for. And also, the water bodies are being destroyed one way or the other by the children washing the sand off these resources in the water bodies. Now, our water bodies are looking like the modern sand, the sand we use for molding. And it is very horrible. So what I am just asking for is, how can we put a stop to this? Even if we cannot put a stop to it, how can we live with this? That's all I wanted to ask as a child who cares about the environment in my country.
I mean,
Yes.
that's such a powerful question, Nakita. And I think, that's a question not just for our panelists, maybe a questioning from everybody in this audience. And because time is not on our side, I wish that we had the whole day to continue this conversation. So sadly, I just have to close it for now. But as we said that, these are the conversations not to just have in these spaces. Like, we need to take them on the streets, we need to take them in our locations. And so for now, I'm gonna call on Salma to join us. So Salma will be giving us our closing remarks. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for the wonderful panel and the wonderful speeches. It's been amazing to be able to be here and listen to all the powerful young voices in this room. I'm gonna start my speech with a quote I think you've heard a lot this COP: "You cannot make politics for us without us." And it's a problem that those in power are not the ones who pay the price if the negotiations fails once again. Those who keep delaying climate finance by talking about processional stuff are not the ones suffering from drought, flooding, and other climate-related catastrophes. They are not the ones whose future and rights are at stake. If that were the case, I think the negotiations would be going in a very different direction. It is a strange feeling being here at COP27 as a young person. We're so close to the negotiation rooms, yet so far away. It is not enough to include young people in the political space if we're not listened to, if our demands are not implemented. Sometimes I feel like we're talking underwater, and I think maybe the children and young people in the room can relate to this. The politicians and people in power want selfies. They want the press to film our meetings, but they never really truly open their hearts and listen to our message. They never truly give us a seat at the table. They recognize that youth should have a voice, the same way that they recognize that we should talk about loss and damage. But recognition cannot put food on the table when the drought has killed the crops, and pledges cannot rebuild villages when the flood has hit. At this COP, there's over 600 participants with connections to the fossil fuel industry. This number only highlights the need for young people, for children, to be present at the COP to counterweigh their influence. Since 2020, fossil fuel companies have poured $160 billion into new exploration after oil. We're in a boat that's sinking, and they are deciding to drill more holes while profiting on it. These companies are the problem, not a part of the solution as they argue themselves. Because the solution is right here in this room. The solution is us, the children, the young people, the indigenous peoples, and everyone else who has the courage to radically imagine a different world. A world where the few's right to extreme profit is not prioritized over the majority's right to a safe environment. Where solidarity is not something that has to be demanded, but instead naturally given as a basic human act. To create that world, we need action and no more empty promises. Right now, there are 2.64 billion reasons across the globe to act on the climate crisis. That is the number of children in the world right now. Because children are on the front lines when disasters hit. It is their schools that wash away when the flood rises. It is their childhood that is stolen when hunger demands them to grow up way too soon. It is with the thought of these children in their hearts that leaders from the global north should pay for loss and damage in new and additional finance. The people in power hide behind their numbers. When we demand climate action, they tell us that we do not understand, that it is too complicated for us. But the climate crisis is not just about numbers and figures. It is about human lives. It is about our lives. And it is honestly not that hard to understand. It is not hard to understand it when the science says that we must keep oil and gas in the ground. It is not hard to understand when the United Civil Society says that those who created the climate crisis should pay for the loss and damage the climate crisis is causing. It is not hard to understand when the youth demands the people in power to take on the responsibility and deliver on climate action. So dear leaders, dear politicians, dear adults, we, the youth, the children, are not stupid. We see what is happening, we see what you're doing, and we're watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Salma, for those inspiring words. Yes, you are watching. So now we've come to the end of our dialogue. I just want to thank all our beautiful speakers. Can we just again give them a round of applause? Again, another big thank you to our audience. And before we all, we've got the video that we've missed. Yeah.
I am Suhail from Jammu and Kashmir, India. I am here representing Save the Children at COP27. Climate change is impacting on children all over the world. There is global warming due to which weather conditions are changing. Crops grow in certain conditions. Due to climate change, there is less production of crops. And this leads to increased prices of crops. And all people cannot afford them. Thus, our right to survival and other rights as well are affected. Climate change is impacting on human beings and other forms of life as well. Children from all around the world have started making Generation Hope campaign toolkit for global climate change. Climate change is the biggest threat that world is facing today. I, being a member of Save the Children's Children Group, has got a wonderful opportunity to work for climate change. I have started taking small steps to contribute for the cause. I am working for replacement of plastic bags with paper bags. I am organizing awareness rallies about climate change, but this is not enough. I need support from other children's civil society organizations and government as well. My biggest learning is that small steps can make big change. I am feeling proud for myself and want to give thank you to Save the Children for supporting me. Children will be impacted by climate change. Count us in decision making. Our voices and action will contribute significantly to build a better planet, a planet that we will inherit. Thank you.
Count us in. I think that, the message has been very clear today that we truly need to center children's rights in dialogues and negotiations because, as Selma has said, they are not stupid, they are not dumb, they're seeing what is happening. So let's take them seriously. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you so much.